you mean by surveillance for hire, and how does this industry operate?
This is a global industry of a whole series of companies operating around the world that build tools to target, to hack into people's phones and to surveil them online, to spy on them online, and then they sell them to whoever wants to buy them. Their targeting is indiscriminate. We've seen them target journalists, politicians, human rights activists, and ordinary everyday citizens. And they're also targeting across the internet. Facebook and Instagram are one piece of this, but we're seeing them target dozens of platforms, websites, and internet services. And so that's why we put out this report to share as much information as possible about this industry, help people understand the type of targeting out there, and empower the work from government, from civil society, and industry to hold this industry to account.
You say the spying is coming from companies in countries like Israel, India, China. Who exactly is behind this, and what are they using this data for?
So one of the interesting and really important challenges with this industry is that they democratize surveillance tools. They make it far easier to get access to the type of tools that let you hack into a phone or spy on someone than ever before. And the question is, who are their clients? Part of what this industry does is they make it hard to figure out who's behind them. We might see a firm who's behind spying on a target, but we're not necessarily going to know who hired them. This is why we enforce consistently whenever we see someone using fake accounts like this to spy on or mislead users across the internet, including on our platforms.
Now, you worked at the Department of Justice and the White House as well, and I'm curious, given your knowledge of how the government works and approaches these issues, what kind of government response you think is necessary?
So for something like this, you have to have a whole of society response. And we outline a couple possibilities in our report. And we've already seen some really encouraging statements from the United States government and from other democratic governments around the world. In fact, just in the last few weeks, about how problematic this industry is. You can imagine know your customer requirements that ensure that these firms know who they're selling to and put some guardrails around who's allowed to have access to these type of tools. You could imagine sanctions. You could imagine a range of other steps that governments could take.
White House Deputy National Security Advisor for Cyber and Emerging Technologies, Ann Neuberger, had this to say about their strategy. I want you to take a quick listen.
What we do there is, via our agreements with other countries, create norms to say, here's what we expect about responsible state behavior in cyberspace, and then we work with other countries to call out activity when there is irresponsible behavior.
Nathaniel, is that the right strategy?
I think it's an important piece of the strategy, and it's been really encouraging to see calls from the United States government, calls from other governments just within the last few days on exactly this issue. What is great to see is you have that paired with work from the civil society community, incredible investigators from Citizen Lab and elsewhere that are exposing these operations, and enforcements from industry teams across different companies. When you put those three things together, you start to really put pressure on this industry and make it harder and harder for them to do the type of targeting and the type of spying that they're facilitating.
Now, Facebook has, of course, been under fire for privacy, safety, and security issues. What do you say to folks who think Facebook calling out others for surveillance and selling other people's data is hypocritical?
We've been doing this work. My team was built to tackle adversarial threat actors, people that are going to target systemically and try to mislead, deceive, or harm our users. I think there's a big difference between building a community where people can share and engage and building tools specifically designed to surreptitiously spy on people, to hack into their devices, and then selling them to whoever would ask. We're seeing very serious harms caused by these actors. And my team and other teams at other internet companies are going to continue to call them out and enforce against them as long as they're targeting people across the internet.
Right, but what do you think of the folks who say that Facebook is the adversary?
So what I would say is we've been enforcing against actors like this. My team has done more than 150 enforcements like this in recent years. We try to expose actors that are intentionally and clearly trying to exploit users. Wherever you build a community where people can gather and share and exchange information, there are unfortunately going to be bad actors who target them. And I think we have a responsibility, others in industry have a responsibility, as do government, and incredible work from civil society to hold those actors to account.
Nathaniel, you've been in this business for a long time, and I'm so curious where you see the biggest threats in cyberspace right now. What are you most worried about with 2022, especially given the cooling relationship between the United States and China?
I think there are a lot of moving parts in the security space right now and a lot of threats out there. One thing that industries like this create, though, is they create the democratization of these threats. We've seen this in the disinformation for hire space, and we're seeing this here in the surveillance for hire space as well. Companies develop that essentially will sell these tools to anyone who wants to buy them. And that means that you have far more threat actors out there, far more governments, far more private companies, far more wealthy private individuals who can use these tools, who can target people, and who can put them at risk. And pushing back on that type of democratization, making sure that there are controls around how tools like these get used, there are limits, and there are protections for people, I think is an incredibly important focus in the months and, quite frankly, years ahead.
And what are you doing at Facebook and Instagram on your end to protect your users from these attacks? Certainly there's a lot that government can do, but what more can Facebook do?
So part of this always is finding and enforcing against these companies, but enforcing isn't enough by itself. We also are continually improving defenses. So we just rolled out a new program called Facebook Protect, which we've tested in the past ahead of major elections, for example, in the United States. It's a program that increases defenses and security for users around the world. And I think users also can do a couple of things to protect themselves. One thing that we would encourage everyone to do, there is a tool on Facebook called Privacy Checkup that lets people review the privacy settings of their account and increase them to sort of limit access to some of their more sensitive information. We would encourage everyone to do that and to take similar steps on other social media sites that they're part of. Everyone should enable two-factor authentication on their accounts. That's important on social media accounts, it's important on banking accounts, but it's also important on personal email, which is where these companies often target.